from Peoria, Illinois.
We have a lot of stressors around us and still feel empowered.
An entrepreneur who is working her way up in fashion.
To Houston, Texas.
I have curves. I'm powerful. I'm within my own body.
Delisa Rose creates and designs cutting-edge and innovative looks.
There's not a lot of Black designers in this industry.
Making her own way around the world.
I just did New York Fashion Week. There's a lot of behind the scenes. It can get really ugly and messy.
A lingerie collection designed for all body types and for women of all ages.
The owner and founder of Delisa Rose.
The brand is named after me.
Please welcome founder and CEO of Delisa Rose Luxury Lingerie, Taquiela Wright. Good morning, Taquiela.
Put your hands together for the one and only Miss Wright.
We have the wonderful Taquiela Wright here for her collection.
It's really showing a lot of the intimacy within myself.
This is An Intimate Night with Delisa Rose, a podcast for every woman or anyone who wants to know them.
Finally, there's something for us, right?
On this episode, Qui talks about her family, her mother, and her grandmother, how they've influenced her professionally and personally. But first, she's been a podcaster for a little while now. So what does her fan base think? Do they like it?
Oh, yes. I've been getting a lot of, a few streams here and there. So I thought, that was pretty cool to see people downloading it and taking interest. Of course, I do get a lot of private messages, a lot. So I even had one of my exes message me and out the blue random. I'm like, what? He's like, I listened to your podcast. I'm like, how did you even know I had a podcast? But I haven't talked to you in over years, over the years. So it's so weird. And he's like, and it was EP3 where I'm talking about my ex-husband. I was thinking, how weird is the ex listening to the podcast? I'm talking about the ex-husband. I was like, only you, Qui. So it was kind of weird. But I do get a lot of private messages from women that are inspired. And I think that's, for me, it's, my approach to doing a podcast was a little bit different at first in terms of the message, and just like I explained, I think in before we started doing this, was to reach an audience of a group of women that, who have had similar experiences as I have had in the past. And, maybe their approach to getting over the hurt and, the healing process of trauma was, maybe it was a little bit different. It took them a little bit longer, or it might have been something that they, they turned to hope. Because I have people that always come to me and ask me, how did you do it? What were some of the steps that you took? Did you do therapy? Or maybe you had to depend on something, codepend on it, a thing or whatever, a person or whatever. And I tell them the story is still the same. No, because I don't do drugs. I don't smoke. I don't drink. In fact, I hadn't had a drink, like a alcoholic beverage drink since I was about, I guess, since my grandmother passed away in 2013. So that was the last time, in my 20s, early 30s. So it's like, imagine all the things I've been through since then, and I didn't have to revert to something to kind of help me get through that moment, those moments in time. Right. So I think women are looking for a sort of another outlet to cope and heal healthy. That's the missing part in today's society is the healthy healing part of it, so it's easy for us as humans, and we're all imperfect. We're not perfect, but it's easy for us to use our trauma as a gateway to something else that could affect the trauma worse, right? And run. But I am very proud of myself, not just from my accomplishments in life, but I think the overall biggest accomplishment for me is overcoming. If one had to ask me actually, I did have someone ask me, what were some of your proudest moments? Overcoming trauma, overcoming, divorce, like we talked about in the previous episodes, overcoming the sickness, overcoming, displacement, overcoming lack of confidence at one point in my life. Self-esteem, to build yourself up to become what I am today. So that takes a lot of courage, and so you have to kind of take that bull by his ears and say, no, I'm going to face this head on. I'm going to get through this challenge. And you have to have a thick mindset to do so and not let it eat you, eat at you as you're going through the process of overcoming. So I think a lot of the messages that I've been getting from these ladies have been very, very inspirational to myself. And I love the pour and support. And it makes me feel like I'm doing the job that I was put here to do in terms of not doing it for the monetary gains. I like this part of this side of me because I'm almost feeling like I'm doing it out of charity, if you will. You know what I mean? Like being done and you're not really looking to gain anything other than helping someone, or maybe a person had it kept in them, had it all introverted, like sucked into their souls, and they didn't know, okay, I don't want to talk about this, but then that's the problem. So I think podcasts are a good way for people to cope. And the podcasters, or the host in this case, this is also a good way to get your story out and help people cope. So it's a two-way street. And I was telling a young lady that this is therapy for me too. So when people ask her, did you go to therapy? No, I did not go to therapy. I didn't take any therapy classes or sessions with any professional help. I didn't use any like drugs or, lean on anything like that. I really just leaned, my 100% was spiritual based. I got closer to God in these moments. And that's was the beautiful thing out of these previous episodes that we've talked about, was the message was becoming, my relationship with God has gotten stronger. My faith has gotten stronger. My spiritual side of me has gotten the sunshine that comes with the darkness of after dark of you going through whatever your trauma is there is a rainbow at the end of the tunnel. You can see the light because I'm actually living in my light right now. And that's what I tell them. So hopefully this session today, we could talk a little bit more about some of the lingerie aspect of the brand.
One of the things I find interesting about this process in talking to you is that in the first couple of episodes of the podcast, people would listen and tell me the word that springs to their mind is courage. And I wonder, where did that come from for you? And how do you define courage for people that are listening to this?
Well, courage for me is facing your fears, and regardless of the outcome on the other side. I've always lived my life as a person that I just been, resilient. When people ask me, what are some words that describe you, or what are your strengths? I always say resilience, and you have to have courage to be resilient. So honestly, to be fair, it has a lot to do with my childhood. And I know we touched a bit of that in the first episode, but the courage to keep going came from that little girl out of Peoria, Illinois, knowing that I wanted to get out of a bad situation and make a life for myself that I am living in my truth today, for. So the courage to keep going really just comes from within me. You have to have that in you, or you won't make it. You have to have courage and confidence, or you won't make it. And that's not just with business, that's with everyday life. You don't know what's going to be thrown at us on the other side. Today I might, I'm up and I'm fine, I'm feeling good, but then you don't know what's coming, right? So you just have to keep going no matter what. And I know that's a kind of a cliche way of saying it, but you really do. That's the courage. And that's what's been helping me throughout these years and throughout my adult years, for sure. It's never giving up, always believing in myself and having hope that God, it got to be better than this. And each time, Bill, my relationship with God got better. So the spiritual side, like I was mentioning before, has helped me tremendously, relying on the word of God. And that's really my medicine to all of this. So yeah, I would say my here to all of this.
So
Yep.
whoever that happens to be, or whatever entity that happens to be for someone listening, it's a higher power of some kind that you feel is definitely guided you all of these years through the things we've talked about, through a bad marriage, through near death, through the highs and lows of your career. Everything has had some kind of a path that you feel was partially yours and partially something else. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would say, all of spiritual. I'm somebody who grew up in a church-based faith structure and household. So born into it, we were taught to have faith. So that's been instilled in me since I was a child, since I was a baby, really growing
Were
up.
you in the choir?
Yes, I sing. I know how to sing. I was in a choir. I was heavily in the church. I was a participant in doing the Sunday school with my grandma, who we talked about in the first episode. And I was also active usher, meaning I was one of the ladies who worked the door and ushered the guests in and sit them down to a proper seat. I was one of the ones who took care of, the church members and making sure they had what they need. So I always had like a service-based personality of serving others. That's what's helped to define me. And what that courage comes out of is because I want to treat others how I would want to be treated. In whatever circumstances I've gone through or going through currently, at least I know that I have had the heart to keep going. And hopefully someone, I come along this journey that will help me to keep going. So it's a 2 or 3-way street. You not only need the spiritual side, you need the courage for yourself, but you also need your supporters. And that can come from your family, your friends, your church members. But at any moment, to depend on, a higher, what you would say, higher source, at any moment, I would just stop and just pray. I always 100% depend on God. 100%. That's really.
And you were not one of those kids that had to be dragged to church. You enjoyed it.
No, no, you didn't. You didn't have, with my grandmother had us in church 6 days a week. No
Wow.
lie. And I'm like, even I would say, this is all we're gonna do. But that's when I was a little girl, not understanding the scriptures or, understanding the faith. And I was in the choir and I was doing this and I was, active. I was very active. She was a really spiritual Christian woman. So the household, like I was mentioning, was somewhat semi-strict. It wasn't that we can go out and do whatever we want. There was rules.
So your grandmother was the first higher power or the most immediate one there in the house.
God has always been the first higher power, but grandma was the one that was the authoritative in her home. And she had a really good relationship with God. What I mean by that is she took her faith very, very seriously. And she was the type of grandma that you did not disrespect, her, you did not disrespect any authority, like elderly, community, church, or be it a friend, her older sister. She was the type of woman that had structure. You know what I mean? She was the first person in my life that provided structure for me. Okay. So this was a good thing. As a young lady growing up now to be a woman in this society, she instilled womanhood in me along with a faith and a spiritual based thinking way, right? And what I mean by that is she believed in traditional standards. The woman should cook, the woman should do this, or as a married woman, she will always say, you have to learn how to do this because you'll be married one day and you have to do this for your husband and your husband is the head. And, so she followed the Bible traditionally. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
This podcast is brought to you in part by Delisa Rose, your luxury lingerie destination, featuring in-house signature collections and other beautiful designs from around the world. Lingerie for every woman, many made to order with a nod to her engineering background. All shapes, all sizes. More at DelisaRoseLuxuryLingerie.com. So how would she feel about the professional life that you've built for yourself?
You know what? Honestly, she always knew about my career as, working in corporate America because my grandparents both worked for Caterpillar and then I joined on. But I would say, how would she feel about me being a lingerie designer? I don't know. Honestly, I couldn't have done any of this if they were still alive. I would be too scared. I'm going to be honest. That was, you can tell there's an influence on me from in this way because a lot of my decision making, even as an adult, I still considered her. I would still call her in my 20s, and I think grandma passed away when I was in my early 30s. And I would call her and say, Grandma, or ask a question or get her support, or it was still like I depended on her a lot. Even in my adult age, I cared about her opinion. You know what I'm saying? So if I would say, okay, I'm going to be a lingerie designer, she probably would have frowned at it. I probably wouldn't have been a lingerie designer.
Do you still speak to her?
Grandma's passed.
No, I know, but I mean, do you still talk to her the way you didn't have any kind of conversations with her?
No, but I do find myself talking to my mom a lot. I don't talk to grandma as much because after my grandmother passed, my mother moved to Texas with me because my mother was her caregiver. Right. So grandmother passed away and I moved my mom here to Texas with me, and mom stayed here for 7 years until she passed. So we got her settled here in Texas to start, her healing journey here. And in that time period, her and I got close, built a real solid mother and daughter relationship in which we didn't have before because remember, grandmother had adopted me. So for me, I think that was the beginning of, I guess, being the daughter of my real mother and not my grandmother, if that makes sense.
Sure. How important is it, do you think, for people to stay in touch with, if anyone listening to this now has parents that are not in their lives but are still alive, how important is it to reach out to them and try and make them a part of, even in a dysfunctional family, a part of your life?
It depends on the situation, I would say. If it's something like, if you say dysfunctional, let's start, it's two scenarios to this. So if you have parents that you had a good upbringing, you were very close, your mom and dad was, active in their lives and loving and caring and provided for them and supported them as till they gotten adults and things like that. You should, regardless, but you should definitely be having a relationship with your mom and dad. I do not condone in no shape, form of disrespecting parents, regardless. But on the other side of that coin, if you had parents like my situation, whereas my mother was, heavily into substance. So that's what the issue was. She was not able to afford to take care of us. And when I say us, I have a younger brother. And so then she realized her shortcomings and then made the proactive decision to allow my grandmother to care for us. Now, during that time, it was a lot of distance, right? So she wasn't like really there. It wasn't like she was coming back to take us to dinner and spending dinner nights with us, or coming to all my dance rehearsals, because I was a really good dancer. And I did all of these shows when I was younger, and, I didn't have my mom or father even in the audience. I didn't really have the support like that. So it wasn't like I had memories of her as a child. My memories of her as a child was very short because she was in and out. So when she she changed and she cleaned up her life and she became like substance free for 20 something years before she passed away. Then we established a mother and daughter relationship that I'm so grateful for that we were able to do, because it's weird because when I almost passed away, my mom was there. And I mentioned that in the previous episode, and she was there being a mom. It's crazy how it comes back. I didn't have her when I was young, but I had her when it was most important. You know what I'm saying? Because I was fragile and not able to care for myself. So here she is taking care of me again. I was living with her, so that out of that pain and things like that came the bond between me and my mom. So I would say it's important to still respect your mother, your parents, regardless, because this life does not come with a rule book of who would be the best mom and dad or whatever the case may be. It's a circumstance situation. So my mom was born in an era where it was a lot of the environment was just really harsh, and she was a product to that environment. And remember, Bill, she was 16 when she had me. She was a kid. So I can't just grow up and say, I hate you. I still treated my mom like she was the best queen. She was the best. I took care of her. I paid her bills. I bought her a car. I moved her here. When she was on her dying bed, she told me I was the best daughter she could have ever asked for. She didn't get to see me or, I would say come to know me in that way when I was younger, but she got to see the woman who she had birthed and appreciated me. That was a great thing.
You can ask for more, but you don't often get it. And that's amazing that you two were sort of reunited in that way. How far along were you professionally when she passed? What of your success had she seen?
Up until Delisa Rose.
So she knew about the lingerie.
No.
Oh, okay.
Her and grandmother did not know about the lingerie. They knew about the, corporate stuff because mom was here and I was married when she was here. Right. So she had seen me become successful and other industries in my field of line of work, but she has also seen me become a married woman. So that's for me, that's success because that's what I wanted. And so me having a brand and building my companies and things like that, like the medical company, she didn't see that. Actually, the medical company came after her because it was inspired from her. So my mom did not know about the lingerie. She didn't know about Delisa Rose. It started during COVID, but I didn't talk a lot about it like this. I told her this, I was going to start, creating some pieces, but nothing like to what we see it today. I didn't go into depth because her illness had took a turn for the worse very quick. And really, I didn't have it on my mind to start thinking about. I think when she passed, I used that as an outlet for me to heal, to keep going. And that was my encouragement for myself is I'm going to do this because I'm going to make my mom proud. I'm going to see to it that I make the dreams come true, in which I birthed it in her home when I was caring for her. Even though she was not here to see it become manifested in all its glory, I still think that a part of her struggle is why I'm so successful today.
We've been talking about courage and we've been talking about your family. And I also think there's another thing besides resilience, and that's that little voice inside of people who are driven, the little voice that says, this is what your path and this is what, and yes, it has help from a higher power, but there's a little voice inside of you. What would you tell other men or women listening to this podcast about how to recognize their own inner voice, how to find it, how to listen to it, and how to help it grow?
For me, I think the little voice is listening to a positive message or affirmation. How to find it, how to make it grow, you have to just listen to your intuition. I think the little voices are all a part of your intuition. If it makes you feel good, chances are you're on the right track. If it's a good outcome from the decisions you've made, chances are you're on the right track. But I'm going to say, to be honest, I have a really high intuition. I have really good discernment. That's a gift. Everyone don't possess that. So you really have to spend time with yourself. I would offer that you understand your likes and your dislikes. If it's a situation, a case where you're in a relationship, or if it's even with your parents, whatever the type of relationship you have, if it's toxic, if it's not good for you and good for your growth and your stability and your soul, if healthy, detaching yourself and setting healthy boundaries is necessary. And then you will be able to see your life flourish as you become, one with yourself and coming out of a bad situation, whereas that inner voice in you is telling you to move to something that's going to be better for you and who you are on your journey in this life. So what's helped me along my path is intuition, discernment, and going with my gut feeling, my first mind. And also ultimately at the end of the day, experience. I go through things, Bill. I might experience something, and if it wasn't good for me, I'm not going to keep doing it. That's like going back to your ex-husband.
But your failures are just as important as your successes.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no way I'm gonna remarry the same man who caused abuse. Does that make sense? Or go to a job that let me go, or or hang with friends that I know they're talking about me behind my back. You got to have discernment. If these people are no good for you, I promise you, you're better off. I would rather spend my time alone than to be in the wrong company of other people.
Well, you mentioned a positivity inside people that has driven you. And I wonder if some people that can't get out of their own way are listening to a negative little voice inside them.
Yeah, I mean, there are always going to be a good and evil. Say, okay, I'm going to give an example because I love their topic of relationships, right? Can you tell? So if you're with someone and this is bad for you, that this guy or girl is just not it. Every time you come around, there's drama. His family don't like you. There's always a negative. It has more lows than it has highs. You might, get along for one day, but then you have 29 days of pure just drama. But yet you have that negative voice in you saying, girl or guy, stay, work it out. It'll get better. Even though it sounds like it's positive, it's not. You have to listen to do what's right. And what's right is the hardest thing to do. If it's the hardest thing to do, then that's what's right. If it's the easiest thing to do, which is staying in a bad relationship or staying in a toxic role or staying in a situation that you just know is not good for you or the people around you, then that is the wrong voice you should be listening to. You do have to get out your own way. You do. And it goes back to what you said, Bill. It takes courage, right? Courage is a big part of this. Do you know how many times I had to break myself down to leave out of my marriage? Like I had to really get strength. I really had to get strength to leave. I was that same person that says, you know what, I'm going to stick it out. And you know what led the decision to keep going was going back to the traditional Bible ways with saying divorce is forbidden. That's what kept me in that moment. Like, okay, I don't want to look shameful. I don't want to be another statistic of, a bad marriage. We're seeing it all over the place now in America. I think at that time, the divorce rate was so high, and it still is, but that not becomes pride when this is not this is not God's best. Sometimes we have to develop a relationship with God so strong to where we have to do what's right for us. I proved it right because I'm gonna be honest, my life has been 360 since I made that better decision. It's been good. It's been on the up. I'm in the best shape, the best spiritually mindset, stable. Just, I feel overall good about my decision. I have no regrets. It was the best thing for me. The only regret that I have is not leaving sooner.
Well, everyone listening to this podcast knows that the only regret they have is that we have to end here today. But there is much more to hear about your story and the inspiration you can be for others. Qui, it's always a pleasure, and we will resume this conversation soon.
Okay, thanks, Bill.